I was 41 years old the afternoon I learned my own name, and the woman who taught it to me had been dead for 4 years. It happened on a Thursday in October in a quiet parlor in Old Lyme, Connecticut. The light came in low through the south window, the way it had come in every afternoon for 19 years. But on that afternoon, the light did something it had never done before. It found a folded piece of yellowed paper hidden behind a small oval mirror, and it whispered my name back to me. Some promises wait. This one waited 28 years. Old Lyme, Connecticut. Autumn of 1972. I had been Mrs. Robert Hartwell for 19 years, and the woman I used to be had been quiet for almost as long. But that morning, something was different. I did not know it yet. The house did not know it yet. Only the light coming in through the south window seemed to know. Our house stood on Lyme Street, the old salt box with white clapboard and dark green shutters, the kind of house that made strangers slow their cars to take a second look. Behind it the garden ran down to a tidal marsh, and in October the maples burned red and gold along the lane, and the air carried the salt of the river and the smell of wood smoke from the chimneys on Ferry Road. That morning was an ordinary morning. I was already wearing the cream cardigan, the moss green shirt dress, the pearl earrings my husband had given me on our wedding day. My hair was pinned up with 2 tortoiseshell combs the way I always pinned it. I poured the coffee. I set out the toast. I read his eyes the way you read the weather.
Looks like rain by the weekend, Nell. I should drop the storm windows on Saturday.
Yes, that sounds sensible, Robert.
He kissed my forehead the way he had kissed it 19 years of mornings. He picked up his briefcase. The screen door whispered shut, and the silence came in and sat down at the table opposite me, the way it always did, and waited. I walked our daughter to the school bus at the corner of Lyme Street and Ferry Road. Catherine was 9 that autumn. 2 long brown braids, a plaid school jumper, 1 scuffed left shoe she would not let me polish.
Mommy, look! I drew a horse. Her name is Pepper.
She is lovely, sweetheart. Look at the way her mane lifts. You see the wind in it.
I see it because I drew it.
The bus came around the bend with its yellow nose. Catherine climbed up. She waved through the window, and I stood at the corner in the autumn light and smiled the smile a mother smiles, the smile that does not quite reach the eyes. Then I walked home through the leaves, and the house took me back, the way the house always took me back, with its grandfather clock ticking in the front hall and its silence widening behind me as I closed the door. I want to tell you about the south parlor, because that is where the story really lives. Against the long wall, beneath a tall window that faced the marsh, stood an antique heirloom vanity. Dark walnut, 3 small drawers, a cushioned bench, and on top, dead center, a small oval mirror set in a frame of mother-of-pearl inlay. 6 pieces of pearl around the oval, a small tarnish at the lower right where my thumb had rested for 40 years. It had belonged to my grandmother, a dressmaker in Boston in the 1880s, then to my mother, then to me, and every afternoon at 4 o'clock, when the light came in low through the south window, I sat on that cushioned bench for exactly 10 minutes. I never told anyone, not even myself, what those 10 minutes were for. But the truth was hidden in plain sight, and the truth had a name. I had been a painter once, not the kind anyone knows, but I had studied at the Rhode Island School of Design for 2 years, and at 22, I had stood on a wooden footbridge at sunset and painted a tidal marsh, and my professor had walked up behind me and said, very quietly, "Miss Caldwell, you have a real eye." I have never forgotten the shape of that sentence in his mouth. Then I married Robert in the spring of 1953. A week after the wedding, I packed the brushes into a hatbox and slid it to the back of the hall closet. I told myself it was a phase. I told myself for 19 years. And every morning of those 19 years, I did the small, careful things that build a life. I ironed the collars. I hosted bridge club. I kept the silver polished. I kept myself also polished the way you polish a thing you have decided not to use. That afternoon, at exactly 4 o'clock, I sat on the cushioned bench in front of the small oval mirror. I did not paint. I did not write. I did not even close my eyes. I simply looked into the glass and breathed. The face in the glass was a face I knew. Hazel eyes, slightly downturned. A faint sunspot on the left cheekbone from a summer at the shore in 1961. 2 tortoiseshell combs. But the woman behind that face was a stranger I had been politely living next door to for almost 2 decades. I sat in the silence, and I did not know what I was waiting for. But the silence knew. And then the silence broke. 3 days later, Robert asked me to thin out the hall closet before the holidays. He said it kindly, the way he said everything kindly. I said yes, the way I said yes to everything. It was a Saturday morning. Catherine was at her riding lesson. Robert was at the yacht club. I knelt on the closet floor in my house slippers and pulled out the old shoe boxes and the wool blankets and the spare lampshades. And at the back, behind a stack of Christmas linens, I found a hatbox I had not opened in 19 years. I lifted the lid. Inside were my brushes, a sketchbook from RSD with my maiden name on the cover, Eleanor Caldwell. And underneath the brushes, a leather-bound photo album I had not remembered owning. But that was when everything changed. I carried the album to the south parlor. The 4 o'clock light was already beginning to slant in through the window, the way it always did. I sat on the rug. I opened the cover, and the first photograph was a photograph of 2 girls on a riverbank in 1944, both barefoot, both grinning, both holding sketchbooks the size of hymnals. Margaret Whitfield, Maggie. The girl who taught me to lie down in the grass and look at clouds without apologizing for the time it took. We were 13 that summer, the summer of 1944. The summer the radio kept saying the boys were coming home. Maggie was the wiry one, with the dark braid down her back and the freckles across her nose, the one whose mother had given up trying to keep her in dresses. Maggie was the one who climbed the boathouse roof in scuffed saddle shoes and refused to come down until I agreed to swear something. It was August. The river was low and slow. The cicadas were singing in the willows along the bank. She made me lie down beside her on a flat slab of granite at the edge of the water, a slab the local boys called Indian Rock, for reasons no one could quite remember. The granite was warm against the backs of our knees. The sky above us was the bleached blue of late August. She rolled onto her side, and she pulled a small bone-handled penknife out of the pocket of her overalls, the one her grandfather had given her for her 12th birthday. She pressed the tip into the stone. She scratched, carefully, 4 small words into the granite, in letters not much bigger than a thumbnail. Quiet hour, forever ours. Then she rolled back, looked up at the sky, and made me promise. No matter who we married, no matter who we became, no matter how loud the world got, and the world will get loud, Nell. The world will get so loud, you will not believe what it costs to hear yourself. 1 hour a day, every day, brushes in hand, no apology. I was 13. I had not yet been afraid of anything for very long, I promised. She pressed her dirty palm against my dirty palm. She held it there until our pulses found each other. Then she said it twice, softly, like a vow she was teaching me how to keep. On the river, Nell. On the river. Maggie died in the spring of 1968. A heart condition no one had caught. She was 37. I drove up to Boston for the service in a black wool coat I had bought the morning before. I drew her hands the morning of the funeral. Then I closed the sketchbook, and I did not open it again for 4 years. I closed the photo album that Saturday in 1972 with my hands trembling on the leather cover. Then I walked into the dining room. I opened the linen drawer. I lifted the folded napkins, and underneath, where I had hidden it the morning of the funeral, was the sketchbook with Maggie's hands on the last page. For 2 weeks I carried that sketchbook in the pocket of my apron. I could not open it. I could not put it back. At bridge night on Friday, while Mrs. Talbot dealt the cards, my hand kept drifting to the pocket. The corner of the leather binding pressed into my hip bone, and every time I felt that small pressure, I forgot which suit had been called. At the yacht club lunch on Sunday, while Robert talked with the harbor master, my hand drifted to the pocket. And at 4 o'clock every afternoon, in front of the small mirror, my hand drifted to the pocket. I would close my fingers around the leather edge. I would breathe in. I would breathe out. But I could not open it. But that was about to change. What I didn't know yet was that the sketchbook had a secret of its own. On the 15th day, the light came in low through the south window, the way it always did. I sat on the cushioned bench. I took the sketchbook from the apron pocket. I opened it to a fresh page. I picked up a pencil from the little drawer in the vanity. It was a cheap yellow pencil from Catherine's school supplies. My hand was shaking so badly, I had to brace my wrist with my other hand to hold it still. I made one mark on the page, a single curving line. It was the first line I had drawn for myself in 19 years, and the silence around it was holier than any prayer I had ever spoken in any pew. I drew for 10 minutes. Quick, ragged, alive. The marsh through the south window, the curve of the mirror frame, my own reflected hand, a stem of dried lavender on the windowsill, a wedding band on a left hand, drawn from above, the way you draw a hand that does not quite belong to you anymore. I did not notice I was crying until a tear fell onto the corner of the page and bloomed there in a small gray flower. I did not stop the tears. I let them happen the way you let rain happen on a window. I drew right through them. They were the first honest lines in 19 years. And that is when I heard the front door open. Catherine had been at her piano lesson. Mrs. Green had cancelled. Catherine had walked herself home, the way she sometimes did when the autumn was warm. She came down the hall with her schoolbag still on her shoulder. She stopped in the doorway of the south parlor, and she watched her mother weep over a sketchbook. I froze. I tried to close the book. My fingers fumbled. The pencil rolled off the bench and onto the rug. She did not say a word. She walked across the parlor, slowly, the way a child walks when she senses something fragile in a room. She set her schoolbag on the floor. She climbed up onto the cushioned bench and sat beside me. She looked at the open page for a long, quiet moment.
Mommy, that's pretty. Why did you stop?
I could not answer. I sat there in the 4 o'clock light, with my 9-year-old daughter on the bench beside me, and 20 years of an answer that would not come up out of my throat. The room rang. After a long minute, I found something I could say. Not the truth, but not a lie either. The shape of the truth that a 9-year-old girl could carry without it cutting her.
I just got tired, sweetheart, a long time ago.
Catherine nodded the solemn nod a child gives when she has decided to believe you. Then she did something I will remember on the day I die. She lifted my left wrist, the wrist of the hand that had been holding the pencil, and she turned it over so the soft inner side was facing up. And she pressed her small mouth against the place where the pulse lives. She held her lips there for a long second. A kiss. But also something more careful than a kiss. The way you press a stamp onto an envelope you very much want to arrive then," she said, in a voice I had never heard from her before. A voice with no question in it. A voice that simply named a thing.
"You should draw the marsh again, Mommy, the way the light moves on it."
She slid down off the bench. She picked up her school bag. She padded down the hall toward her room to do her arithmetic homework. I heard her bare feet on the wooden floor. I heard her bedroom door click softly shut. And I sat alone with the sketchbook trembling in my hands and the 4 o'clock light slanting across the rug. But the room was not done with me yet. What a 9-year-old gave me was something rarer than forgiveness. She had simply seen me, without flinching, without correcting me. She had treated my private grief the way a librarian treats a rare book, carefully, reverently, without putting her thumb in the middle of the page. I do not know how long I sat there after she left. Long enough that the 4 o'clock light went from yellow to amber to a low horizontal honey gold. Long enough that the marsh outside the south window turned the color of old brass, and the shadow of the maple in the side yard climbed slowly up the parlor wall. 20 years of silence had finally found a voice in the parlor of my own house, and the voice belonged to a 9-year-old girl in a plaid school jumper with one scuffed left shoe. The world had cracked. The crack was small, but light was getting in. I stood up at last. My eyes were swollen. I splashed cold water against my face in the powder room and dried it on a linen towel. I needed something for my hands to do. So I came back to the parlor, and I decided to clean the small mirror on the vanity. I took a soft cloth from the linen drawer. The amber light was now low and almost horizontal, lying along the top of the vanity like a long, thin sash. And I lifted the small oval mirror from the bracket where it had sat, untouched, for 40 years. The truth was hidden behind the glass. I just did not know it yet. And the mother of pearl frame, after 40 years of being still, finally loosened in my hands. The wooden backing slid a 1/4 of an inch. Something white showed at the edge. A folded paper, yellowed at the creases, pressed flat between the glass and the wood. My breath stopped. I sat down on the parlor rug with the mirror in my lap. I slid the wooden backing the rest of the way free. An envelope fell out into my lap, slowly, the way a leaf falls. On the front of the envelope, in a handwriting I had not seen in 14 years, were 6 small words. For Nell, when the silence gets loud again, M. I had not seen her handwriting in 14 years. My hands knew it before my mind did. Now I want you to picture something with me. Picture the south parlor of the same house 14 years earlier, in the summer of 1958. A different light, a different season, the same vanity, the same small oval mirror in its mother-of-pearl frame. Maggie had come down from Boston for a 3-day visit that July. Catherine was not yet born. Robert was up in Hartford for an insurance conference. I was 27. Maggie was 27. She had a pixie cut now, and her hands were spattered with the kind of paint stains my hands used to have. On the third afternoon, she said casually, the way she always said the things that mattered most, "Nell, are you still painting?" I told her I had not painted in 5 years. I told her I did not have time. I told her Robert needed me to keep the household running. She did not argue with me. She just looked at me for a long, quiet moment, the way she had looked at me on the riverbank when we were 13. Then she changed the subject. On the fourth morning, the morning she was leaving, I went into the kitchen to make iced tea for her train ride. Maggie stayed in the parlor. I did not know it then. I did not know it for 14 years. But in those 8 or 9 minutes, while the kettle whistled on the stove and the ice clinked into the glass pitcher, and I sliced a lemon on the wooden board, my friend was working at the small mirror with deliberate hands. She lifted the mirror from the bracket and slid the wooden backing free, with the steady, patient motion of a woman who handles old books for a living. She placed a folded letter against the wood, slid the backing back into its grooves, and set the mirror gently on the vanity. Then she pressed her palm flat against the glass for a long, quiet moment, and she whispered something I would not hear for 14 years.
Find this when you need it, Nell. Not before.
She came into the kitchen 10 seconds later, smiling, and we drank our iced tea in the breakfast nook. An hour later, I drove her to the train station in Old Saybrook, and I waved at the back of the silver train pulling away, and I never saw her again. 10 years later, she was gone. I sat on the parlor rug in the autumn of 1972, with the small mirror beside me, and the wooden backing in my lap, and the envelope in my hands. The seal was old. The glue had gone brittle. It opened with a soft, dry sigh, the way old paper opens when it has been waiting a long time. I unfolded the letter. The paper was the heavy ivory cotton stock she had used for every birthday card she had ever sent me. The ink was a soft blue-black from a fountain pen refilled too many times. The date at the top, in her neat, firm hand, was July 14th, 1958, 10 years before she died. Years later, I would understand what she had done, but not yet. I read the letter the way you read something you already knew was true. I read it once silently. Then I read it again, slowly, aloud, to the empty parlor, and the small mirror, and the 4 o'clock light. Because some things have to be spoken in the air to be received. Dear Nell,
If you have found this, the silence has gotten loud again, hasn't it? Hasn't it, Nell? So now you listen to me, the way you listened on the riverbank when we were 13. When I made you put your dirty palm against my dirty palm and swear on the river. You promised me 1 hour, brushes in hand, no apology, not for the dishes, not for the bridge club, not for the storm windows, not even for the people you love most in this world. 1 hour, every day. That was the promise. The world will tell you 1,000 reasons, That hour does not belong to you. Your husband, your daughter, your kitchen, your own polite little voice that has spent 20 years apologizing for taking up space. The world is wrong. The world has always been wrong about this, Nell. And you have always been the one who knew it. You owe yourself everything you ever quietly wanted to be. Every single thing. The marsh at sunset. The light on the water. The girl on the granite slab who said yes when I asked her to swear on the river. She is still in there. She has been waiting for you. Do not make me come back from wherever I am to remind you again. Because I will, Nell. I will come back. I am that kind of friend and you know it. With every ounce of love I had in me when I had it. Mags.
I sat on the rug and I understood. She had hidden that letter 10 years before she died. 10 years. She did not know she would die in 1968. She knew something else. She knew that I would lose myself. She knew it before I did. And so she planted the medicine in advance, behind the only object in the entire house I would ever sit alone in front of. She did not put the letter in a drawer where Robert might find it. She did not put it in a book. She put it behind the small oval mirror because she knew that one day I would lift it. And she trusted me to come back. The promise we had made on the riverbank when we were 13 was not Maggie's promise to keep. It had always been mine. Maggie had simply held the door open. For 28 years, from beyond the grave, for the last 4 of them. I pressed the letter against my chest. I closed my eyes. The afternoon light caught the small mirror behind me and turned the inside of my eyelids the color of honey. She had known me better than I had known myself, and she had trusted me to come back here, to this mirror, on the day I was finally ready. Robert came home at 6:30. The roast was in the oven. The table was set with the good napkins. The small mirror was back on the vanity. The letter was folded into the front of the sketchbook in my apron pocket. I did not tell him about the letter. Not that night, not for many nights. But I poured the wine, and we ate the roast, and he told me about a young man at the office who had lost a policy file, and I listened, and I waited, and when the plates were almost empty, I set down my fork, and I said something.
Robert, I am going to draw for 1 hour every afternoon, from 4 to 5. I would like the house to know that hour is mine.
He set down his glass very slowly. He looked at me, really looked. The way you look at someone you have lived beside for 19 years and only now seen for the first time. There was a long silence. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked through it, and then he nodded once, very gently.
All right, Nell.
Just that. All right, Nell. 3 small words that did not undo 19 years, but opened a door inside them. From that afternoon forward, the hour was mine, 4 to 5, every day, brushes in hand. I painted the marsh in the snow that December. The cordgrass bent under a thin white crust. I painted the marsh at the first green of April, when the new shoots came up through the broken stalks of the old year. Season after season, the small mirror watched me work, and the work watched me become whoever I had been before. Catherine sometimes climbed onto the bench beside me with her own paper and her own pencils, and we sat at the small mirror together, two girls 54 years apart, working in the slanting south window light. She drew her horses, I drew the marsh. Sometimes she would lean her shoulder lightly against my arm and we would breathe together. Sometimes she would ask me a question that began with, "When you were a girl," and I would answer her. The silence around us was no longer the silence I had been hiding in. It was the silence I had come back to. Now I want to tell you where I am sitting as I tell you this story. It is the autumn of 2026. I am 95 years old. My hands are spotted now, the way my grandmother's hands were spotted when she handed me this same vanity in 1949. But they are still steady. They are still mine. Catherine is here in the parlor with me. She is 63. She teaches art at a high school in Providence. And on the rug at our feet, with her knees pulled up to her chest, sits her daughter. My granddaughter, Lila, 15 years old. Auburn hair like mine when I was her age. A charcoal smudge on her wrist. On my lap, wrapped in a square of clean linen, are two things. The small oval mirror in its mother-of-pearl frame, and a yellowed envelope dated July 14, 1958, sealed now in a glassine sleeve to keep the paper from breathing itself away. And then, 54 years later, the mirror found its next pair of hands. I unwrap them slowly. I hold them out to Lila. This belongs to you now, sweetheart. But the hour belongs only to you. 1 hour, every afternoon, brushes in hand. The world will tell you 1,000 reasons that hour does not belong to you. The world is wrong. Lila's eyes filled. She did not move for a long moment. Then she reached up with both hands and she received the mirror the way a girl receives a thing she has been waiting for without knowing it.
I promise, Grandma.
And so I want to tell you, before I go, what I learned that October afternoon in the south parlor of a small saltbox house in Old Lyme, Connecticut, in the autumn of 1972. What Maggie had been waiting 28 years to teach me. The title of who you really are is not given to you by anyone, not your husband, not your children, not your parents, not even the friend who loves you most in this world. They can hold the door, but the silence is the stage. And the quiet title you discover for yourself on the stage of silence is the proof of the moment when serotonin circulates most deeply through you. The doctors call it serotonin. I call it coming home. I am 95 years old. The afternoon light still comes in low through the south window. I still sit here at 4 o'clock. The mirror has gone now to the next pair of hands. The promise has gone with it. But the hour is still mine, and it will be hers. And one day, it will be the hour of a girl I will never meet, who will sit in some other parlor, in some other autumn, in some other slanting beam of late October sun, and lift the small oval mirror and find what she needs. An hour every afternoon, brushes in hand, promise me. If this story moved you, sit with us again on the porch light